For the 5th time in 10 minutes, she glances at her screen. Still nothing. No reply to the message she sent 3 hours ago. The very same man she felt unsure about last week now consumes her every thought. Not because he's remarkable, but because he did what so few men have the discipline to do. He retreated. He became scarce. He stopped the pursuit. Now she's the one lying awake. You believe women crave endless attention. You assume they want non-stop affirmation, a flood of texts, instant replies. But observe what occurs when they receive it. See how fast intrigue fades when you hand them everything they claim to desire. Witness your own rapid descent from intriguing prospect to emotional sponge, from enigma to conquered land, from a prize to a mere consolation. The unspoken truth is this: feminine desire isn't ignited by accessibility, it's sparked by doubt. The question of whether she can truly have you, the ambiguity of her position in your life, the mystery of whether you're thinking of her while she's fixated on you, that chasm between desire and possession, that fertile ground where fantasy takes root, that is the birthplace of real attraction. And most men obliterate it by eliminating the gap too soon. You answer text the second they arrive. You cancel your plans at her whim. You justify yourself when she creates space. You pursue when she withdraws. With every anxious action, you are drafting the terms of your own rejection. A man who is perpetually on call is not a rare find. A man who abandons his own world isn't worth joining. A man who is easily won isn't worth winning. Women are built for the pursuit. They just pursue in a different way. Where men chase overtly, women chase by setting tests. They build barriers to see if you'll collapse. They step back to see if you'll lunge forward. They call off meetings to see if you'll plead. Most men fail these trials miserably. They hurdle the barriers, frantic to show their devotion. They lean so hard they topple over. They beg as if a single evening holds their entire future. But the men who succeed, those who don't give chase when she retreats, who don't explain when she tests, who don't falter at her obstacles, they become the enigmas she can't decipher, the trials she can't overcome, the peaks she feels compelled to summit. That necessity, that fierce urge to earn what isn't freely given, holds more power than any bouquet, flattery, or constant presence ever could. This isn't about manipulation. It's about cultivating a life so rich you won't desert it for a possibility. It's about being so grounded that her emotional whirlwinds don't unsettle you. It's about being so whole that her validation isn't your cornerstone. When you live these principles authentically, not as strategy but as your core, you become the puzzle every woman is instinctively searching for. Consider what a challenge signifies to her. A man who is a challenge possesses alternatives. He has criteria. He has limits. He has other focuses. He isn't hovering by his device awaiting her contact. He isn't reshaping his world to fit her calendar. He isn't treating her as the sole woman alive before she has proven she deserves that rank. That very selectiveness, that discernment, that readiness to disengage, makes her yearn to be the one chosen. She cancels your Friday plans on Thursday. Some vague reason about work or not feeling well. The excuse is irrelevant. What matters is your reaction. What most men do next reveals their deep desperation. They message at once to ask for a new time. They call to confirm she's all right. They send repeated notes trying to secure another meeting. With every attempt to recover the situation, they are systematically ruining it. Neediness transmits through every channel. The urgency of your reply, the volume of your words, the sound of your voice, your refusal to grant space. When she cancels and you instantly try to pin down a new date, you announce you have no other purpose. When you follow up again and again, you announce you're already emotionally hooked. When you overreact to standard dating friction, you announce you can't tolerate a setback. The needy man requires continual confirmation, needs to define the relationship, needs to rush toward a guarantee, because the unknown feels terrifying. But the unknown is where attraction flourishes. Doubt is where longing is nurtured. Not knowing is what keeps you on her mind late at night. The instant you require certainty, the instant you insist on constant reassurance, you have declared you are not the reward. You are the petitioner hoping to be selected. Observe how neediness appears. You send a second text when her reply is slow. You scrutinize her online profiles for hints about her mood. You consult friends about her intentions. You construct complicated reasons for her distance. You treat every exchange as decisive. You seek clarity as if it were air, and you are suffocating. But clarity is the killer of mystery. The more you need to know, the less she needs you. Trying to accelerate intimacy is neediness in a mask. You want to define the relationship after a handful of meetings. You want commitment before you truly know her. You want assurances before you've shown your own value. You're trying to secure her, not because you've judged her worthy, but because you're afraid she'll be taken. That terror, that sense of scarcity, that frantic urge to lock things down, it seeps into everything you do. Predictability is the end of attraction. When she can anticipate your every text, your every word, your every reaction, you become part of the scenery. Comfortable, dependable, dull scenery. The kind you don't really see until it's missing. The kind you replace without a second thought. The kind that serves a purpose, but sparks zero passion. Mystery isn't deception. It's the careful sharing of information. She doesn't need to know you've been thinking about her non-stop. She doesn't need to know you kept your evening free, hoping she'd reach out. She doesn't need to know you declined other invitations, just in case she appeared. The moment she knows she possesses you entirely, she stops wanting you intensely. Slower replies build room for wonder. When you don't respond instantly, her imagination activates. What is he doing? Who is he with? Why isn't he as available as the others? That pause between her message and your answer is where interest compounds. Not because you're being manipulative, but because you're demonstrating that your universe doesn't orbit around her communications. Being somewhat unpredictable maintains her engagement. Sometimes you're free, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you make the first move. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're affectionate. Sometimes you're reserved. Not in a calculated way, but in a genuine way. Because that's how people with full dynamic lives behave. They aren't predictable machines, dispensing focus on command. They are multifaceted people with shifting moods, responsibilities and availability. The man who is too transparent is too simple to discard. When she knows she can have you whenever she wants, the compulsion vanishes. When she knows you'll always be waiting, the anxiety of losing you disappears. When she knows exactly what to expect, the thrill fades. Mystery builds the emotional landscape that fascination demands. The highs of intimacy, the lows of separation, the uncertainty that keeps her committed. Seeing multiple people isn't about being a manipulator. It's about escaping the scarcity mentality that breeds desperation. When she is your only prospect, her every action feels critical. Every message is overanalyzed. Every date is overloaded with significance. Every rejection seems catastrophic. But when you have options, the dynamic shifts. Abundance generates real confidence. You aren't acting unbothered. You genuinely are less bothered, because your emotional investments are diversified. You aren't pretending to be busy. You genuinely are busier because your time is spread. You aren't faking low interest. You are authentically less intense because your focus is shared. This isn't about deceit. It's about dating multiple people until a mutual explicit commitment is made. It's about not pouring all your emotional capital into one person who hasn't yet merited it. It's about preserving your options until someone demonstrates they are worth forsaking those options for. And women perceive this. They can tell when you genuinely have options versus when you are pretending. The man with abundance doesn't overreact when she creates distance. He doesn't pursue when she steps away. He doesn't break when she tests him, because he understands that if she leaves, others will stay. If she says no, others will say yes. If she plays games, others will not. This understanding, this reality, transforms his entire demeanor, and his demeanor transforms her entire response. Women are drawn to men that other women desire. It's social validation rooted in our psychology. The man whom multiple women want must possess value. The man who has alternatives must be worth selecting. The man who isn't desperate must have a reason for his confidence. That perceived worth, that demonstrated value, that proven appeal makes her want to be the one who ultimately wins him. Your phone is not your ally in early courtship. It's an instrument, and most men wield it like a blunt tool when they should use it with precision. Every message, every call, Every contact either strengthens the connection or weakens it. Most men weaken it by using communication for reassurance instead of for purposeful interaction. The phone is for arranging meetings, not for having them. Long text threads eliminate intrigue. Extended phone calls ruin anticipation. Disclosing your entire history through messages removes the incentive to meet in person. The man who unveils everything digitally has nothing new to offer face to face. He becomes a story she already knows, a film she's already watched, a tale with no surprises left. When she cancels plans, quiet speaks louder than any response. Don't demand reasons. Don't instantly propose a new time. Don't repeatedly ask if she's fine. Your silence communicates everything. It says you have other engagements. It says her company isn't required for your contentment. It says you are self-assured enough to provide space without requiring an explanation, and that quiet will resonate in her thoughts more powerfully than any message you could craft. Your replies should be self-assured, clear, and light. Not long justifications of your value. Not sorry attempts to gain favor. Not subtle retaliation for imagined slights. When you respond from a place of abundance and inner security, even rejection loses its sting. A simple no worries, let me know when you're free, carries more weight than lengthy negotiations. The man who over-explains is trying to make up for something. Usually the fear that without relentless contact she'll move on. Without regular affirmation, she'll lose attraction. Without persistent attention, she'll find another. But the reverse is accurate. The man who communicates thoughtfully, but infrequently remains in her thoughts. The man who uses fewer words often says more. The man who isn't always free becomes more desirable. Women don't want to be hunted. They want to be selected. The distinction is profound. Hunting suggests desperation, as if you're running after something trying to get away. Selecting suggests a conscious decision, as if you've assessed possibilities and made a choice. One feels like strain, the other feels like an honor. The romantic story women desire isn't one of relentless pursuit, it's one of deliberate commitment. It's the man who could be with anyone, choosing her in particular. It's the test of earning someone who isn't readily available. It's the triumph of capturing the interest of someone whose attention isn't easily won. The love story isn't he was fixated from the start, it's he had other possibilities, but he picked me. Constant pursuit ruins the narrative. Stories require tension, obstacles, and the unknown. If the conclusion is evident from chapter 1, no one remains interested. If the protagonist obtains the reward without effort, it's not a story worth reading. When you remove all hurdles through total availability, you are writing a dull script she doesn't wish to be in. The emotional intensity women seek comes from the dynamic of advance and retreat. The periods of deep closeness, followed by space. The doubt that makes assurance meaningful. The distance that makes nearness precious. When you are always there, always pursuing, always accessible, you flatten the emotional journey. You become monotony instead of a symphony. Being occupied isn't a tactic. It's about genuinely having priorities that are important. When she wants to meet and you are legitimately unavailable, a crucial realization dawns on her. She sees you aren't waiting idly for her contact. She comprehends that obtaining your time requires intention. She recognizes that being with you means contending with other worthwhile pursuits. And competition generates value.
Your calendar should be a stronghold with guarded entry points, not an open house everyone can visit. When you are too easy to reach, you become a utility, not a treasure. Like a corner shop that's always open. Convenient but never remarkable enough to be special. The man who requires scheduling, who has limited windows, who treats his time as precious, becomes precious by extension.
Boundaries aren't blockades to isolate yourself. They are sieves to identify who deserves entry. When you uphold boundaries concerning your time, energy, and focus, you compel her to exert effort to reach them. And effort creates commitment. The more she works for your attention, the more she prizes it. The simpler you are to obtain, the less you are worth obtaining. The man with boundaries doesn't restructure his existence for a potential partner. He incorporates a partner into an already complete life. He doesn't cancel on friends for a tentative date. He doesn't miss his workout because she might message. He doesn't abandon his ambitions because she showed she was interested. His life moves forward with or without her participation. And that self-sufficiency that integrity, that wholeness without her, makes her want to be a part of it. Remaining steady when she creates turmoil is the ultimate test of appeal. Women gauge emotional strength by creating instability. They generate turbulence to see if you'll be an anchor or be carried away. They create scenes to see if you'll participate in the drama or remain an observer. Most men fail by mirroring her emotional state instead of holding their own. When she withdraws, and you don't follow, you display emotional control. When she creates a crisis, and you stay composed, you show fortitude. When she tests your limits and you uphold them, you confirm your value, your capacity to remain grounded, regardless of her emotional climate, signals that you are the stable foundation she can depend on when her own world feels unsteady. Emotional volatility indicates low value, because it reveals you aren't commanding your own inner world. If you can't govern your own feelings, how can you manage hers? If you collapse under relational stress, how will you handle life's pressures? If her behavior determines your reactions, then who is actually in charge? The emotionally volatile man is a risk, not a rock. Confidence isn't noisy or confrontational, it's a quiet knowing. It's the capacity to endure unease without rushing for a solution. It's being alright with her being displeased without needing to resolve it right away. It's taking rejection without making it personal. It's preserving your own perspective no matter the outside forces. This emotional steadiness, this unwavering core, this denial of being drawn into chaos, is more compelling than any looks or wealth. The man who stays calm during her tempests becomes the harbor she seeks. The man who doesn't respond to her tests passes them automatically. The man who sustains emotional balance while she navigates emotional waves becomes the foundation she requires, not by attempting to become these things, but by genuinely being them, by cultivating authentic emotional strength that no amount of testing can disrupt. Here is what confuses most men. The less you are invested, the more she becomes invested. Not faking nonchalance while privately overthinking, actually being less invested, because your life is sufficiently fulfilling that one person's view doesn't determine your value. This isn't about being cold or detached. It's about being complete enough that a rejection doesn't break you and an acceptance doesn't make you. The paradox grows stronger. The more present you are, the more absent she becomes. The more you commit, the less she appreciates. The more you chase, the quicker she retreats. The more you require her, the less she desires you. Because need is not appealing. Desire is appealing. Choice is appealing. But need is off-putting. It indicates you are unfinished, that you are using her to complete yourself, that you aren't choosing her, but demanding her. Women aren't drawn to men who play games. They're drawn to men who don't need them. Men who want them and appreciate them, select them, but do not need them. The challenge isn't about making her pursue you. It's about being worthy of pursuit. It's about constructing a life so meaningful that entry into it feels like an achievement. It's about becoming so grounded that her company improves, but does not dictate your reality. It's about developing such internal assurance that external approval becomes nice to have, but not essential. Women aren't addicted to men who challenge their ego because they like hardship. They're addicted because challenge indicates value, because difficulty suggests worth, because the simple route rarely takes you somewhere meaningful. The man who challenges her ego is the man who has principles, who has options, who has self-esteem, who won't trade his self-respect for her approval. You've been conditioned to think that showing interest means revealing vulnerability, that caring means capitulating, that love means self-sacrifice. But true strength is the ability to care without requiring, to want without demanding, to desire without relying. The real challenge isn't about being aloof. It's about being whole, not needing her to fill a void, because you are already complete. The men who naturally challenge women's egos aren't attempting to. They are simply living lives that hold more significance than any single romantic opportunity. They have purposes more important than romance, objectives more important than validation, standards more important than partnership. They aren't acting difficult to obtain. They genuinely are difficult to obtain, because their life is already valuable, and joining it requires merit. This isn't about techniques or ploys. It's about evolving into the kind of man whose absence is noticed, whose presence is appreciated, whose attention is merited, whose time is valuable, whose investment signifies something because it isn't distributed freely to every interested party. It's about becoming authentically valuable, rather than merely appearing to be. The addiction isn't to the challenge itself. It's to what the challenge represents. A man who won't be won easily, won't depart easily. A man who has standards, has value. A man who maintains boundaries, maintains dignity. A man who doesn't need her, won't deplete her. The challenge is merely the sign, the value is the cause, and value cannot be faked. It must be constructed. Stop trying to appear challenging, and start building a life that inherently presents a challenge. Stop pretending to be busy, and start filling your time with things that truly matter. Stop acting as if you have options, and start creating real alternatives. Stop performing self-confidence, and start building genuine self-assurance, because women can distinguish between an act and the truth, and they are only captivated by what is real.